Us, everybody. Welcome back to the Gran Torino. Delighted you could join me. Please, before we get started, as I always do, don't forget, press the like button, press the subscription and the bell, and you'll be reminded of future broadcasts here on the Gran Torino. Before we get started in today's disquisition, today's reporting, I want to just direct you and thank you all for your continued support at the Gran Torino website, World Wide Web, grantorino.ie. There you'll find many articles. Thank you all for your continued support on the shop. Link is provided in the description down below, as is all the articles in today's show that I bring to you. You'll find the links in the description box if should you wish to continue your reading there. First of all, I want to bring to your attention one of our online academia, Professor Zero World, and this is in relation to Tullamore. Recently, we had announced that Tullamore was to receive another direct provision centre with a estimated 168 refugees to be placed into the Marion Hotel, which was formerly a hostel. Point to note, it was duly noted or duly designated to be a homeless shelter, but has since been adopted for the asylum process. This from Professor Zerwald. He starts off by, residents of Tullamore do not believe these people when they talk of refugees, war, families, women and children. This is just to guilt and manipulate you into accepting a large number of mostly young males you know nothing about into your town. Don't fall for it. Look at the department's own data here, showing the large number of single males presenting as asylum seekers. Also notice they abruptly stopped publishing this data in November 2018 without any further explanation. The chart here shows the male and female applicants for asylum. That was recorded through the year of 2018, as the professor reminds us that these recordings were stopped in 2018. But below, the chart below shows 55.66% of applicants are single males. Going back then to the thread from the professor, was it because it was attracting more and more attention online in video presentations such as this, or perhaps it was because the data was showing a rising trend in the proportion of single males in the asylum seeker numbers, going from 43.04% in July of 2018 to 55.66% in November 2018. Whatever lay behind the decision, no further reports of this type were published, but we have no reason to believe that the situation is dramatically different from now. All the talk in the media back then was of families, women and children, etc. Furthermore, look at the countries these refugees are coming from, Albania and Georgia. What wars are going on in there? In EU recognized safe countries. How can you believe that any of these are legit, given a situation like this? Two reports there that you can see, almost half the new asylum seekers are from safe areas. The professor continues, in a situation like this, the whole thing is a complete farce, and the department has the nerve to impose this on you without any real or meaningful consultation. Ongoing reports of Councillor John Leahy saying that Indigenous Irish or local residents in Tullamore, in Offaly, will be leapfrogged by the asylum seekers' internal housing list that are kept by the housing associations. Well, I guess you can see now that they have a great deal to hide and hope to manipulate you into accepting that this is a fait accompli. Uachtarard shows that it doesn't have to be this way. If you stand together against this now, you can prevail. Don't let them win. Resist. And we'll go straight on then into what I want to bring to you is Richard Dellingpole's article in Breitbart. And it's the title is, let me just drop this down here. Dellingpole, European Union discards Ireland's Varadkar like a soiled rag. The article starts, to the surprise of literally no one, the European Union has discarded Irish leader Leo Varadkar like a soiled rag. Now he is no longer of any use to it. Varadkar, you will remember, was for a brief period the EU's golden boy, its brightest hope of sabotaging Brexit, thanks to his ingenious ruse of making custom arrangements on the Irish border the sticking point of negotiations. As Liam Halligan pointed out here, the Irish backstop issue appeared suddenly and from nowhere, largely as a consequence of the meddling wannabe big boy Varadkar becoming Taoiseach Prime Minister. It was only in June 2017 when May lost her majority, becoming reliant on the Democratic Unionist Party, and Varadkar replaced Kenny, that the Irish border hit the headlines. Brussels then saw an opportunity to raise the political stakes by asserting the impossibility of avoiding a harder border unless Britain stayed in the customs union. This prevents the UK signing trade deals with the rest of the world, of course, while compelling us to keep sending Brussels billions of pounds each year under the EU's common external tariff. Since then, Dublin has danced religiously to the EU's tune. Varadkar disbanded Kenny's working groups and cranked up the rhetoric, claiming that Brexit threatened the Good Friday Agreement. Many of those responsible for that precious treaty robustly dismissed such claims. This is scaremongering. I do not see a connection between the process and the peace in Northern Ireland, said Lord Trimble, Northern Ireland's First Minister, who won the Nobel Prize for his efforts in securing peace in Ulster. One of the consequences of the unimportance of Irish politics, who really cares what goes on in a country with a population of less than 5 million, is the ambitious Irish politicians seek to punch above their weight by allying themselves to a much bigger and more influential bloc that is the EU. Little Leo, Ireland's very own Justin Trudeau, no doubt imagined that if he had he did his bit to derail Brexit by vastly exaggerating the threat posed to the Good Friday Agreement, Brussels would one day shower him with gifts. He nearly succeeded to, as Rose Clark recalls here. During the Brexit talks, he was drafted in to do the EU's dirty work for it. The EU hit upon the issue of the Irish border as a device to try and trap the UK in EU regulations forever, and Varadkar was used in order to help exaggerate the border issue. It never did make much sense why Britain would have to remain in full alignment with the EU regulations, purely to avoid a hard border in Ireland, when Switzerland has a free-flowing border with several EU countries in spite of not being a member of the EU, the single market, or the customs union. Even so, the EU nearly pulled off its trick. Had Parliament voted for Theresa May's deal, which even Boris and Jacob Rees-Mogg did at the third time of asking, the EU would now be rubbing its hands, having neutralised the threat of a competitive, free-trading and deregulated Britain. Instead, yesterday's nearly man, Leo, is now an absolute zero. After his general election defeat 2 weeks ago, he has resigned as Taoiseach and is now only staying in place as caretaker leader till a new government can be formed. To add insult to injury, his former controllers at the EU have decided they owe him absolutely nothing for his service to their cause. As the Express reports, Leo Varadkar criticised European Council President Charles Michel and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen for offering Ireland a bad proposal that saw the country contributing a lot of the EU budget without getting much back. The now former Irish Prime Minister went on to admit that he accepts Ireland will have to pay more than any of the other countries in the next 7 years. Mr. Varadkar said, I met with President Michel and President von der Leyen last night, and the proposal on the table is one we can't accept. Essentially, it means Ireland will contribute much more to the EU budget, but will actually receive less back in terms of payments to Irish farmers and also funds for regional development and social development, to which there are only two rational responses. And we're going to need a smaller violin. And before I bring in my next guest, let me just read this short report from Italy concerning 3 Serie A matches called off over coronavirus in Italy. Three matches in Italy's Serie A will not go ahead as planned on Sunday due to the threat of the coronavirus in the country. The virus, which originated in China, has now spread to 8 countries in Europe and has resulted in the death of 2 people in Italy. The 3 postponements come in orders from the Italian government due to a number of northern towns going into lockdown after a growing number of cases in the country. Inter's tie with Sampdoria has been called off, as has Atalanta and Sassuolo, as well as Hellas Verona and Cagliari. 3 other matches are scheduled to take place in Genoa, Turin and Rome, but these will go ahead as planned. The government is working on urgent measures to decisively confront and contain the cases of coronavirus contagion, read a letter from Sports Minister Vincenzo Spadafora to Italian Olympic Committee President Giovanni Malago on Saturday. Following the measures taken by the Cabinet for the protective reasons and maximum protection on orders of the government, I am asking you to suspend all sports events of every level and discipline planned for the Lombardy and Veneto regions on Sunday. One of the teams affected is Inter, and it's currently unknown whether the next game will be affected as they host Ludogorets on Thursday in the Europa League. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll introduce my next guest, Mr. Davide Quadri. Davide, how are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm fine. Thank you.
Davide, I just read that report there about 3 Serie A matches being cancelled over in Italy. Can you bring us up to date and up to speed on what is happening? Davide is the Lega Youth Coordinator for Lega and based in Brussels Parliament. Davide, congratulations on your promotion and your new situation over there. I hope things are going well. Davide, first of all, like I say, can you bring us up to date on your understanding of the latest events and what's happening with the coronavirus? Also, how will this affect the Lega campaign going into the elections? I see Matteo Salvini is very much on the campaign trail following his Instagram account and Facebook accounts. Also, with the lockdowns seemingly coming in place, is Italy prepared and primed and ready for a quarantine as such that we see what's experiencing in China?
Well, what's happening now in Italy is very scary for people because we are the most, we are the biggest country for people infected in all Europe and in Western society. We are now around 120, 130 person infected. What's happening now is very weird because 2 or 3 weeks ago, the local government in Lombardy and in Venice, they asked to the government that the people who came from China go to quarantine because we need to check what's happening. But the government, the left government say, no, it's not the problem with that. It's only because you are xenophobe that you want that. But now we have a social bomb that is exploding in Italy. We don't want to scare people because our local minister, regional minister are working a lot to do everything they can to stop the spreading of this infection. But we can have prevented that if we have worked properly in the past month. Italy have shut down all the direct plane between Italy and China, but people came in another way. They came to Moscow, they came to Dubai, to other places, and they arrived from China and Italy, but there is no track on that. There is no quarantine. The Chinese community worked very good because they do a voluntary quarantine. All the Chinese, they came back from China for the New Year's Eve, for the Chinese New Year's Eve, they go in quarantine, in voluntary quarantine in their home, in their community. But not everyone do that because people have to work. People came back for work from their, people don't go to China to holidays, not a lot, but they go to work and then they come back. And there is no prevention. And now we are seeing what's happening now. We have 50,000 inhabitants, the city that is completely locked down. People cannot go inside and cannot go outside. And now we don't have any sport activity, no concert in Lombardy, in Venice, in Piemonte, in all the north of Italy. That is also the most economically important place in Italy. So we are going to see, I think, also economical crisis, because if you shut down for 2 or 3 weeks the firm, if you shut down a university, you shut down a school, people get very scared, and that's also have impact on economy.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, how is the press reporting on it? We have a report here from the Irish Times. basically driving the multicultural narrative as not to be racist, because Chinese people are experiencing supposed forms of racism, or, you know, because of the coronavirus, they might seem to be getting avoided or whatever. But the press is reporting it as a case of racism. This is, in essence, what your government has done by closing down direct flights to China. Ireland doesn't seem to have done any sort of precautionary measurements in following that kind of line, in closing and monitoring borders. This is a very serious situation.
Yeah, it's serious because Italian government have locked down the flight, shut down the direct flight, but with that solution, nothing changes, because people have to fly to Switzerland, and then from Switzerland they came to Italy. From Moscow, there is a lot of flight from Moscow to China and to Italy, and so people still arriving. The real situation, the real solution have to be check people who came. You know, when someone take a flight everywhere in the world, is checked and controlled. You have a database with everyone who is going, who is traveling for or where. You have to work on that issue. You have to stop people that came in quarantine. That is only for 14 days, not something draconian. It's not something insane. And the Chinese in Italy have a good history of cohabitation with Italians. So there is not too much racism about that. And also the Chinese was the first community that say, we go voluntary in quarantine because we don't want to look like the sick people that want to infect other people. But
no, of course.
that's something that doesn't happen. Maybe with the tourists, maybe with people that came back from work, in Italians maybe, or European that came back from work, and maybe they are infected. We don't know. It's 14 days that you can see the result of this infection. So it's a very creepy situation, and we hope that we can work very well on that. I totally trust what's happening in Lombardy, because Lombardy and Venice have the best healthcare in Italy. So I hope that they can afford that, and they can afford that the fight. But at the same time, I'm also personally scared, because I live here in Brussels. We have only one case of coronavirus in Brussels. My family is back in Italy, and is back near Milano, where there is a lot of contagion now. I cannot hear you.
Again, my apologies. Yeah, very serious situation, Davide. We'll be following stories and keeping an eye on that situation very cautiously. Let's break over to Lega a little bit of a sidetrack, and go into the politics of Italy as it stands. Just keep us up to date on what the present government are talking about. What is the current points of conversation in Italy? What is the number one thing that people are talking about in Italy as it stands? And how is the Lega placed to meet your general elections, which are, I don't understand, when are they due this year, is it?
Well, it depends, because a normal election will gonna be in 2 or 3 years. But this government is very weak. They don't have any clear majority in the parliament. So it's possible that they can go down whenever. But now all the Italian topics before the outbreak of coronavirus was about economy, and it was about also the fight inside the government for some judiciary reform, because now the government have 4 parties that support that government. Was the Democrat Party, there was the far left, the 5 Star, and also Matteo Renzi party. Matteo Renzi now is his own liberal party, and is clashing a lot with the 5 Star, and so it's possible that then that can result in a collapse of the government. It's tough, but it's possible. At the same time, Salvini is campaigning a lot, because we have a lot of regional election in summer. We're gonna have a regional election in Campania, Naples region, in Puglia, in Venice, in Liguria, with Genoa. So we have a lot of campaign going on, and that's why also Salvini is traveling in Italy daily, everywhere. We don't know what can happen now with the outbreak of coronavirus, also on the transportation, because for sure there going to be some problem. They're gonna shut down some train. Maybe plane have some problem. So yeah, we are looking what's happening now. Nothing is sure.
Yeah, interesting. I just want to bring you back a little bit. You might be able to explain for my viewers and subscribers and viewing around the world. The As it stood when Matteo was in Parliament, when Lega were joined with the Five Star, it was some people are describing it as a force of the left and the right coming together to work under a functioning government, and it did for a period of time work till I believe Brussels got involved and obviously the banker got their candidates that they wanted to do, and obviously they scuppered the alliance that was between the left and the right of both sides of kind of a form of nationalism to do what was best in the national interest from the migration crisis and from the economic crisis that is threatening towards Europe. We see Germany is very much entering into recession, also with the fourth biggest economy just about to leave, as in the United Kingdom, with no trade agreements in place. It's very worrying times for Brussels. Ireland, as I read from the first article there from Breitbart and Richard Dellingpole, we are very heavily burdened with a debt. We covered almost quarter of the European banking debt, and will, as a result of the Brexit, have to pay even more in contributions towards the European Ponzi scheme.
Budget.
Very little return. How is Italy looking for an IR exit? Is that in the topic of conversation?
Not too much, because people are quite scared about the topics to quit the European Union. Also because we have, like you, a very strong monetary union, so we share the same currency. It's different than UK. At the same time, there is a very huge debate also here in Brussels, where I work now, about the next budget, because with the Brexit, the state have to pay more. The national state have to pay more to the European Union, but no one wants to do that, because they recognize that if they do that, the voters get angry, because they can understand that the European Union is very far away from their concern, is very far away from their values, and they don't want to contribute to that. So there is a huge clash now about that situation. I'm not sure how it's going to resolve it, because the Commission is in the mix, but the national state have the last word to say that, and they're not going. They don't want to make more money in the European Union now. And about the alliance between the Five Star was a very good experiment, because there was like two types of populism: the right-wing populism and the left populism can work together to do something for the country, for the best of the country. But unfortunately, when someone got in the power, it's very easy to corrupt them, and when that's what happened with a lot of Five Star. Then when they became power, then became a ruling party. They changed their soul and their identity. That's why also now they don't have any votes anymore. They are polling around 10%. They take 30% 2 years ago, to 30 to 10. It's very impressive how they are far away from the concern of the people now. Microphone.
Again, I keep doing that. My apologies. Very much in play with the Brexit, the way the Brexit situation turned out. Again and again, the will of the people was not taken seriously, and every time a party or a government failed to produce what the people wanted, they were effectively ousted out of government or out of politics. That's happened here with some pro-abortion politicians that were placed were very vociferous in their advocacy for pro-abortion, and they have all lost their seats. So people are, there is a pushback politically, but I fear with the media's cover-up of the migration as it stands, the international obligations, now with the kind of the economic pressure that's going to come with more contributions, more countries being asked to contribute towards the European scheme, with more and more burdens of, how shall we say, social housing that we're seeing more. We're having more pressure on our healthcare over here now with the population growth, and it's not a natural population growth. It's happening at an exponential rate that would normally, would take a long period of time, many decades to come if it was allowed to happen naturally and people could assimilate. But because it's happening so quick and being pushed, I see now also through some justice courts that the open society is now being brought into play, with some justice ministers, I think, over here in Ireland being aligned and allied to the open society and what that brings. I see also Soros is being investigated over in the United States slowly. is there any, has there any been talk of removing open society institutions and things from Italy? I know Hungary has banned open society from its institutions over there.
Well, now I don't think so, because now they have their own government. They are friendly with them, with the left and the five-star. I think that in the future, for sure, we're going to have some clash about sovereignty when we have an institution like Open Society that want to dictate your own agenda. And something very interesting is how also Israel have this type of fight, because every time that someone attacks Soros and say that his idea are dangerous for the country, how his interference in our national sovereignty is dangerous, they use the same label, like you are anti-Semite because the Soros is Jewish, so you are anti-Semite. But that's not true. Even Netanyahu and Israel have a huge fight with the George Soros society and his influence in their election and in their democracy, because there is something not something fair if someone with money want to invest and play demography and play politically in your democracy, because it's up to our citizen, not to a foreign millionaire.
Yeah, a very real and credible threat, one that we must really begin to take seriously. You know, when there's a huge 18 billion war chest unleashed and given to various NGOs and lobbyist groups to push and facilitate a narrative of the migration, and various other ideologies are given, you know, funding to sort of facilitate and mix up the narrative of what is actually going in Gambian politics here in Ireland, and through different politics anyway going on in Brussels. Davide, I want to leave it there. I want to thank you very much for joining us on this episode and bringing us up to date on Italian politics. And again, I want to congratulate you on representing
Thank you very much.
up there. And again, hopefully be able to get back over there to see you shortly. We might do another report shortly. Hopefully the coronavirus situation is tested and arrested, and measures are put into place. I hope, and I keep my your family and my prayers and all that for your situation over there as well. And hopefully that our government here will also recognise the danger of coronavirus and start putting in restrictions in our borders and in controlling medical screening of people that are coming and going. I think it's very, very important. Davide, thank you very much. Anything to say before we sign off?
Sorry?
Anything to add? Anything you want to let the people know before we sign off?
Well, I thank you for your time and for your space. I wish you the best in Ireland. I think that something can happen in the future. I hope so. Also politically, because you have to solve a lot of problems for the Irish people first. So have a good luck, and see you soon, my friend.
Us, brother. Us. Talk to you soon.
Us.